Wherever you are, welcome to this short half-an-hour session on how to construct a team values charter. Tim Baker's my name, and I'll be with you for the short duration of our 30 minutes together. Look, if you've got any questions that you would like to ask me or comments, the best way to do this is to go to the chat box and put those in the moment you think about them, because obviously with half an hour, we don't have time to have a sort of a 10-minute conversation at the end. So just type in your, don't feel uncomfortable, just type in your question whenever you get a chance to think about it, and I'll respond to it immediately. All right, so I'll just share my slides and then we'll get underway. So this is being recorded. So the good news for you is that you'll get a copy of the slides and the recording at the end of the presentation. So sometime today, I'll be sending you out an email. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And so just relax and enjoy. So obviously, the Team Values Charter is something that I have put together, and it was put together in my new book, Winning Teams, the 8 Characteristics of High-Performing Teams. And I want to share it with you. It's a very powerful model. It's very easy to implement, and it produces great results. So there's a lot of good things that work for this. Just a little bit about me, because some of you probably don't know who I am, and just give you a little sense of who I am. Clearly, I'm an author. I've written 10 books, and I'm actually on number 10 book at the moment. So thoroughly enjoying that process. And you can see that obviously I do a lot of speaking. I also do some executive coaching, and you can see there that I occasionally still play the game of rugby here in Brisbane, which is probably a little sad at my age, but nevertheless, we play every second week, by the way. And the reason for that is very simply this, that it takes 2 weeks to recover at my age. So there you go. So that's a little bit about me. Let's launch into the topic somewhat. I just wanted to point out that my new book, Winning Teams, I received some wonderful endorsements, particularly from some legends in the game of rugby, because I'm using little anecdotes throughout the book to talk about the game of rugby. And I'm particularly focusing on the All Blacks. Being Australian, my view is if you can't beat them, learn from them. And that's certainly what I've attempted to do. And so I'm using some little anecdotes in the book that give us a little bit of an insight into what the All Blacks do, because after all, they have an 83% success rate, which isn't too bad. And what I've tried to do is translate some of those ideas into the world of work. So you can see that there's some nice comments from some former players, and of course, the Commissioner of Queensland Police, Katarina Carroll. There's also a very nice testimonial here from Nick Farr-Jones, who was a legendary captain of the All Blacks, World Cup winner, and he had some nice things to say about my book as well. So it's always nice to get those endorsements, if you like, from people who are celebrities. I guess that's the way I'd put it. Okay, so let's talk about the Team Values Charter. The first thing I want to say is that because the subtitle of the book is the 8 Characteristics of High-Performing Team, obviously I go into the 8 characteristics. And you can see on the right-hand side, around the outside, you can see the 8 characteristics. Now, I'm not going to run through all of those, and I have webinars every Friday, which you're more than welcome to join. And what I try to do is touch on one of those characteristics every Friday. And in this case, of course, you can see the arrows pointing to building trust. Now, all of us would agree that building a high-performing team is all about building trust, amongst other things, of course. And so the Team Values Charter is one of the activities that I have in my book that assists a team to build trust. And it's not the only thing that you can do, of course, but it's certainly a very good starting point. So I'm going to share that with you this morning, and I would encourage you to try it out. I think you'll find you'll be very pleasantly surprised at what it can create. So you can see the 8 characteristics, and as I said, I'm going to touch on building trust today. Okay, so launching in. One of the objections that people would have in relation to building a team values charter, I think, in their team, particularly for very technically focused teams, might be that how do I get my people to take values seriously? Because we're bombarded with values everywhere, aren't we? We've got values on the plaque on the wall. We walk past that every day. The organisation has their values on their website. And so after a while, we kind of get a little bit blasé about values and we wonder whether they're really useful. The trick is that we don't have, or the trick in the team values charter is your team is actually creating the values. So that the old adage that people don't argue with their own data is very, very true. But when people walk past those values or they see them on the website, they won't disagree with the values. I think in many cases, people would say that they make perfect sense. But the point is, the people who look at those values often don't have any input into them. So they're often done by a manager or a group of managers or HR or whoever it might be. And obviously, because of that, people kind of just, they don't take it too seriously because they didn't have any input into it. So it's quite a legitimate question to ask, why would people take values seriously? Now, the big distinction between the team values charter and the organizational values is that the team values charter is all about basically unearthing how people would like to be treated in a team context. So you might say, well, where's the line there? Well, you've got your corporate values, that's fine. But the values around the charter and the team are really about how team members want to be dealt with in a team environment. So that's what that's about. So it's not about, creating a new set of values that's overtaking the corporate values. This is just a team values charter for your team that basically explains how people would like to operate when they're working together. And that's really what it's about. And obviously, if you can create that platform, then it gives a sense of psychological safety to the team members because they know basically what the rules of engagement are when they're working together. All right, so that objection is real, but I just wanted to sort of unearth that before we went any further. So I intend to talk about three things this morning, and bear in mind, we've only got a short time together. I'm going to talk about the elements of trust. So what are the actual ingredients of trust? Because obviously we talk about it a lot. We know it's important. We can tell when there's mistrust and we can tell when there's trust, but what are actually the elements of that? Then, of course, I'm going to talk about the team values charter and the questions that you can ask in order to get that moving. And then I've got a special offer for you at the end of this presentation. Okay, so let's launch into the elements of trust. And these elements come from a previous book that I wrote called Conversations at Work with Aubrey Warren, as you can see up the top there. But ultimately, what we have found is that there are ultimately 5 key elements that are critical if we're going to look at a team that's basically got a high trust level. One of them is openness. In other words, openness really implies that people are willing and able to express their point of view in a team environment. Now, that's obviously an element. And we all know that that's not always the case, that people will hedge their comments or perhaps not make the comments because they're concerned about what people might say or think. So openness is critically important. And you show me a high-performing team anywhere, and I'll show you a group of people or a team of people who are reasonably open with each other. Now, the other side or the other side of the coin there is that there needs to be acceptance. In other words, if we're willing to be open, then obviously we want to be accepted. And that's one of the reasons, of course, that we're not open. So the other side of the coin is that we want our other team members to be accepting of other people's points of view. And that's really important. So those two do work in tandem. The third one there is congruence. And congruence really, in this case, refers to how closely aligned our behaviours are with what we say. And this is really important, because obviously if a leader says something and does something else, for example, if the leader says to their team members, I want you to be very open, and as soon as somebody jumps in and says something, the leader jumps on them and says, oh, that won't work, or that's not something that we're really focused on at the moment, then obviously there's a mixed signal, and that sends a signal of incongruence rather than congruence. The third one is, the fourth one is reliability. Now, reliability is the issue. Or showing up on time, says Leslie. Yeah, that's a good comment. Leslie's just saying that I'm assuming what you're saying there, Leslie, is if a manager says, I want you to be on time, and then they don't turn up on time, it's a very good example of incongruence, which is very, very true. Thank you, Leslie. Reliability, of course, is that you can be relied on to keep your word. It's slightly different to congruence, and that is that if you promise something, that you're expected to deliver. And, we see it all the time. People overpromise and underdeliver when we really should be underpromising and over-delivering. So that's really important, because that erodes trust very quickly. And the last one there is competence. We expect people to be reasonably competent at what they do. And, it's not the be all and end all, but if people aren't actually competent at what they do, then obviously that's going to erode trust in a team. So they're the basic elements. And of course, we go into those in great detail in that book. But I just wanted to share that with you, that at the end of the day, they are the five elements that make a big difference we've found in teams. All right, so let's get on to talking about the Team Values Charter and having a little look at what all that's about. So the Team Values Charter, as I said earlier, it's a powerful way to assist a team to work together towards a common goal. It's not time consuming. You will actually find, and I'm not exaggerating in any way here, it will take you 20 minutes to complete. And the best time to complete it is in a team meeting. So, get your reporting finished a little earlier and spend 20 minutes on the Team Values Charter. At the end of that 20 minutes, you will have everything you need for the charter. So it's not a difficult task. It's not an onerous task. You will actually find it's very enjoyable. You'll be quite surprised at how incredibly well this goes. And I say surprised because of what I said earlier about values and what people think about values. So this is how it works. Basically, what you do is at the beginning of this session, whenever that is, you ask people, well, first of all, you ask people to bring a pen and paper or something, if they're recording on an iPad or whatever, to bring something along to record answers to. Now, you might think, well, wouldn't it be best to get everyone to do this before the team meeting? And the answer is no, because unfortunately, it's likely that one person may forget to do it, in which case you've got to start again or wait for them to finish. And that's very disconcerting. So the idea is do it live, do it in the meeting, and here it is. And what I've done here is I've shared with you the answers. So if you were asking me these questions and we were doing a Team Values Charter together, this would be my answer in the blue. Now, the other side I'd say to this is that you need to do this yourself. Now, it's not a question of you just asking these questions and hoping that everyone fills out their answers accordingly. You yourself have to answer these questions because you yourself are part of the team. And it's not a good look if you're just sitting there getting this information from other team members, but are not willing to share your own views about these things. So the first question you ask is, what is one value that's important to you when working in groups and teams? Pretty simple question. Now, one value. So I don't doubt there are many values, but the point is you can't have too many in the charter, otherwise it just gets too long and so forth. So what's one value? So everybody actually writes down a value. Now, if you were asking me this, I would probably write down respect. To me, that's critically important working in teams. So that's my answer to that question. Now, the next question that I ask, and I just let people write that value down. And then after they finish that, my next question is, what is your definition of that value? Because obviously, if you write down a value, anybody writes down a value, the idea is that your definition of that value could be quite different to somebody else's definition, you see. So the idea is that we need to actually understand what people mean. And in the example that I'm using here, of course, respect can mean different things to different people. So if you ask me and I wrote down my answer, I would say respect is when people are prepared to listen to others, even when they may not agree with their point of view. So to me, that summarizes respect. I'm not saying it's the only answer, but it's my answer. And other people may have a different answer to what respect is, but I would write that down because that would be my focus. So everybody writes that down. You'll just need to wait a little bit for everybody to write that down. We don't want people to write paragraphs. We actually want people to express this in one simple sentence. So give everyone a chance to write that down. And then once you can notice that everyone's written it down, the next question you ask is, why is that value important to you? Now, this is very, very useful for you if you're the team leader, because by doing this, what you're actually doing is getting a sense of why people believe that value is important. So it sort of gives you a little bit of an insight, doesn't it, into why people see that as important. So if you ask me that question and I had to write it down, I would say, I like to feel that I'm respected and my opinions are valued when working with others. That's why I think respect is important. I need to feel that I am respected and part of the team. Now, someone else who wrote down respect might have a completely different focus on that. That's fine. But certainly that's my comment or my answer to that question. So again, you just pause, give people a chance to write this down. When people are looking up at you, you start on question number 4. And question number 4 is where the rubber meets the road. This is the critically important one, because at the end of the day, a set of values is just words on a piece of paper. At the end of the day, values drive behavior. I know you've heard that before, but it's really true. So my next question to everybody would be this: what behaviors would be consistent with that value? So what I'm asking people to do now is to identify the certain actions or behaviors that would demonstrate that value. So if you ask me, I might say something like this. I might say, well, when not interrupting someone when they're speaking would be, particularly if they don't agree with my point of view, well, that to me would be a very good way of, of demonstrating respect. And again, as I said earlier, someone else might have a different behavior, and that's not the only behavior. There's probably there are many behaviors that would demonstrate a value. But what I'm trying to do here is get a sense of how people might act or play this or play it out, once the charter's been developed. So basically, now you can ask a 5th question if you want. I personally think that 4 is enough, but you can ask a 5th question. I haven't listed it here, but you might then move to what behaviours would be inconsistent with that value. In other words, what are the behaviours that might violate that value? Now that's usually the opposite of question 4. And so therefore you'll get some behaviours that would be obviously not respectful, that you want, if you ask me, to put forward. Now, you've now got everything that you need. You basically have every single thing that you need in order to create the charter, because now what you do, and this is where it gets very interesting, is you ask everybody in your team to read out their answers. Simply read out their answers. Now, if I were you, I would start first. Why? Because I'm setting an example. And remember, I said one of the elements was openness. And I think perhaps the first step would be for you to jump in and say, well, here's my answers to these 4 questions. And then what you do is you just simply read them out. You would say, exactly as they are on the screen. Now, I'll tell you something interesting about this because I've done it with lots and lots of teams across 21 industries. And I can tell you this, you will hear a pin drop because this is very interesting stuff to listen to because people are interested. The first thing they're interested in is, of course, what their team leader is, what do they value? And then, of course, once you've said your bit, what would be a good idea, and this will depend very much on the trust that you have in your team, but if you can get a conversation going, so there's not just static presentations going throughout the team, it may well end up being static, and that's okay. And that could be because one, they're wondering what all this is about. And secondly, they're not sure whether they should challenge anybody. That's that openness again. But I think at the end of the day, encourage people to ask questions, to make comments, to seek clarification. And the reason for that is that, this is a team effort. It's not just individual presentations, but nevertheless, go around the table, best way to go, and ask everybody to contribute to those 4 questions. And as I said, you will be surprised at how quiet people are when people are talking, because it's very insightful. It's very interesting to hear what other people think are important attributes in a team environment. Now, when you have finished, you may well find, and I've had this happen many times, that a couple of your team members have got the same value. So what do you do then? Well, that's great news, actually, because it means that people are on the same page. However, if you've got a couple of people that say, write the word respect as their value, then you would then encourage those people to get together at the end of the meeting, perhaps, and basically share their answer to question 2 and try to get them to merge the 2 statements so that they cover both people. So in other words, you're trying to sort of create a statement that actually covers that value that both people who have mentioned it in the meeting are happy with. And that's because, of course, you want to be inclusive, but that creates a little bit of collaboration outside the team. But ultimately, what you'll end up with is a list of values. You'll have some definitions around those values. You'll have listened to why it's important. You don't need to record that, but it's interesting to hear that. And you'll understand some of the behaviours that people would expect if those values are being honoured. Now, what the charter will actually look like is that you will have a list of values on the charter, and underneath each value, the idea is to use the definition that's been raised in the meeting. So in other words, the values charter will simply have the value and then the definition. A value, definition, value, definition. You don't need to record 3 and 4. That's basically giving people an opportunity to discuss it, but that doesn't need to go in the charter. Now, what that implies is that it's a good idea, if you can manage this, is to have somebody in the team record the information. And it's even better if you can have somebody who's not one of the participants in this exercise to do so, because they've got enough to do, of course, just writing the answers down to these 4 questions. So that's a good idea, because then it's all done and dusted by the end of the meeting. And the good news is that once you've done this, I would publish it. And the great news is you can now lead your team not only by process, but also by values. So for example, if somebody has spoken to a customer in a fairly negative way, and one of the values that's listed is customer focus, then you can then ask that person very clearly, do you think the way you interacted with that customer was consistent with our team values charter? So you see, you've actually got two sets of processes. You can talk about, how people have done their work as you'd normally do, but the other side of it is you can talk about how it is consistent or inconsistent with the values, and that's why it's so powerful. So give it a try, folks. You'll be surprised how incredibly useful it is, and it works extremely well. You can only try it and see what happens. Now, just a quick plug before we sort of wrap up. Next Friday, remember, I've got one of these every single Friday, and you're very welcome to join. They're short, sharp, to the point. They raise an issue that's, something that's relevant to teams. And so next Friday on the 28th of May, I have another session called Building Unbreakable Trust in Teams. So we're still on the characteristic of trust. We'll look at how to do that in a little bit more detail, and I'll talk about those elements a bit more. If you're interested in joining that, you'll get a copy of the slides, and you can see on your screen there that you've got the link. So all you do, of course, is click on that link or paste it into your browser, go in and register as you did for today, and you're in. So I'd welcome you to do that. The other thing I'd say to you that I'm giving you a discount on my book today because you've been so good to come along to this session, spend a valued half an hour with me. The book's advertised for $35 inclusive of postage. I will give you my book, Winning Teams, for a discount of $25 to $25 today, if you respond to my email. In fact, I will send you out a little bit of information about that later on, but just send me an email. There's my email there by the close of business today. I will send you the link, and I'll send you a token, and all you do is go in and you'll get your discount on the book. And of course, I'll sign it, I'll send it out to you, and away we go. All right, so you can take advantage of that. I'll just close down my screen. All right. So, folks, that's it for me. I don't think there's too much more I need to say. I just want you to give it a go. Try it out. You'll be surprised, as I say, how incredibly valuable that is, and it works really, really well. But you won't know unless you try. And it's not just some academic exercise. I've done this with tough detectives in policing. I've done it with people in orchestras, public sector, private sector, not-for-profit, and it's worked very, very well in all of those environments. So I know it works. And it's a simple way of creating a little bit more interest in your meeting as well. So, folks, that's it from me. So thank you. And we look forward, hopefully, to seeing you next Friday. Spread the word, and thank you. And I wish you all the best, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you and goodbye.